Hi! In this video I would like to show you how I knit this neck step by step. It has a simple cable pattern both in the front and the back. It has a shaped neck opening and ribbing here on the neck itself. I will begin here at the bottom and work my way up, so I will begin by making two pieces here that are exactly the same, and I will later connect them and make the neck. I will show you everything step by step, and I will put some information on my website about yarn, needle sizes, stitch numbers for different sizes. I will make this for both adults and children, and I will place a link to that website in the video description field below the video window, and hopefully you will also find a link in the top right corner of the video. And I will begin by making one of these pieces. First thing I do is to find my circular needle and my yarn, and I will begin to cast on the stitches for my front or back piece, because they are going to be exactly the same. And the way I choose to cast on is because I would like my edge to be elastic and soft. I don't want to feel a thick edge when I touch it. I just want the edge to be a part of the garment. So what I do is that first I make a slip knot, and I place it onto my needle, and I gently pull the yarn just to make it sit close on the needle, not too tight, because then it will be impossible to pick up with when I knit afterwards. And this is my first stitch, and now I'm ready to continue my cast on, and I just secure this stitch with my left hand here, and then I hold the yarn with my right hand between my middle finger and my thumb like this, and I use my index finger and I go from underneath the yarn and up. Then I twist the yarn so that I make a loop around my index finger. Next I take my knitting needle and I place it on top of the yarn, and I move down to the tip of my index finger up through the loop, and I slip it onto the needle, and then I just slightly pull and adjust it so that it sits close to the first stitch, not too tight, but I don't need like this big gap. I just want it to sit close to the other stitch on the needle. So again, hold the yarn between these two fingers, use my index finger from down and up, twist to make a loop, knitting needle on top, and go down to the tip of my finger, up through the loop, and slip it onto the needle. And I will just continue like this until I have the right amount of stitches on my needle. And when I have the stitches I need, I will get back to you on how I begin to knit my cable pattern. Now I have all my stitches here, And I'm ready to begin knitting. And I will not knit in the round, even though I use a circular needle. I will go back and forward, and I will use this end of my circular needle as needle number 2. And the pattern I'm going to knit is a cable pattern where it's just twisted around as I showed you before. And now I will begin to knit that pattern, and of course if you are following a different pattern you will have to adjust. But I will begin by slipping the first stitch. Just slip it over to the right needle. Then I will purl 2 stitches, and there are many ways to make a purl stitch. I will just show you how I choose to do it now, and you could either do that or your own way. So I begin at the tip of my index finger here, and I hold my yarn over 2 fingers like this, and that is simply because that is the way I prefer. You can do it in your way, no problem. So again, I begin here at the tip of my index finger, and I go underneath the yarn, and then I stick my needle through the stitch from right and towards the left, and then I go back underneath the yarn again the same way I came, and then when I pull my needles apart here, you can see that the yarn has placed itself between my needles, and now I can take my right needle and just bring the yarn through the stitch and slip it off the needle. So now that is 1 purl stitch, and I'll make 1 more the same way behind the yarn, pick up the stitch from right and towards the left, go back again, and bring the yarn through the stitch and off the needle. Next I will knit 4 stitches. Then I will begin at on the left side of the stitch and stick my needle through from left and towards right. Then I go to the tip of my index finger, I move the needle behind the yarn to pick it up, I bring it through the stitch and off the needle. And 1 more knit stitch, and you can now see that I always have this gap between my needles, and this is because of the way I cast on. And this will be an issue in the first row only, because then each stitch is not secure. You can see I can pull here and it's just twisted here, but this is also what makes it so elastic, and at least in my eyes very good looking afterwards. It makes a very good result, so I think this is okay for one row. And all you need to think about is not to pull your needles too hard apart, because then your gap will be a lot bigger. And when you knit, just make sure that you place the stitch close to the last one, and then try to keep this with as little pressure as possible. So I need to knit 1 more, and then now I purl 3 stitches again. You can see the gap just moves along with my knitting. And now I will continue throughout this row with my purl 3 knit 4 pattern, and when I'm at the end here I will get back to you on how I continue. Now I have finished the first row, and I will simply turn. This is, I just have to mention that I am now facing the right side of my work, and that is where I have the 4 knit stitches and the 3 purl stitches. So when I now turn, I turn to the wrong side, and when I go back now to follow my pattern, what I need to do is simply to follow what I see here, and I will knit over knit stitches and I will purl over the purl stitches. Slip the first stitch like this, and here I finished with purl stitches, and they have the purl side here and then the knit side will be here. So now I will knit and here I'm looking at the purl side of the stitches. You can see the small knots here or bumps. So I will purl the purl stitches, and here where I see the knit side, I will knit the knit stitches. And so my pattern continues. And now I will continue until I reach the end here of my row, and then I will get back to you just to show you how I slip the first stitch when I have the working yarn facing me. Now I have finished my second row, and when I knit the last stitches I will have the yarn away from me here, but when I turn to go back, the yarn will be, I will be facing the yarn. It'll be on my side of the work. And then when I slip the first stitch, if I just bring the yarn in front like that and then slip the first stitch, then I will pull the purl side of my stitch around to the edge, and that will create an edge with small bumps or knots on it all the way. It's not wrong to do it, but personally I don't like how it looks. So what I do is to, of course, if my yarn already is on the side away from me, I will just place it over my fingers and go on. But if it is towards me like this, I go over the needle and then I slip. When I do it like this, the yarn will end up in between the first and the second stitch, and I will pull the knit side of the stitch around to the edge, and it creates a smoother edge, and it will have the same V pattern as the stitches on the knit side. So when I have gone a bit further, I will show you. But now when I have done this, I will just continue as usual. So now I will go back and forward, and I will continue my pattern by knit stitches and purl stitches, no matter if I am working from the knit side or the purl side. And when I have the right number of rows, I will get back to you on how I make the actual twist in my cable pattern. I have now finished the 6 first rows, and I just check, just to be sure that I am facing the knit side, that I can see 4 knit stitches and 3 purl stitches. And if that is what I see, I am ready to do the next step in my pattern. And I begin as normal by slipping the first stitch, and then I purl the next 2, and every time I get to a section of 4 knit stitches, I bring out a 3rd needle. There are actually cable needles that is for this purpose, but you will be just as fine with this one for what I am going to show you now. And what I do is to just slip the 2 first stitches onto my, I'll call it my cable needle, like this. I will place it in front like this. I could go here in the back. The difference is that my cable will twist the opposite way. So now it will twist over from right and towards left. So this side will be on top. If I do like this, then this side will go behind. So that is the only difference. Just be consistent so that they twist the same way. And when I have done so, I will knit the 2 stitches here in the back first, the 2 that are on my circular needle. And when that is done, I will go to my cable needle and I will knit the 2 stitches that I placed there. So now these 2 and these 2 stitches have changed places on the needle. I purl the 3 purl stitches as normal. And here I have a new section of 4 knit stitches. Then I just repeat, slip 2 stitches, the first 2 onto my cable needle, place it in front like this. Then I knit the 2 stitches on my circular needle, and then the 2 stitches on my cable needle, and then I purl the purl section and continue like this throughout the row. After this is finished, I will do 5 rows where I knit the knit stitches and purl the purl stitches back and forward before I twist my cable again. And I will continue like this until my front piece has the length that I am looking for. And when it has, I will get back to you on how to shape the neck opening. Now I have knitted my front piece to the length that I was looking for, and I can now show you how the edge looks with the cast on that I used, and as you can see, it's very elastic, and it also pulls back after being stretched, and it has no thick edge. It is really soft, and here you can see the edge after doing what I showed you when slipping the first stitch. So next thing I am going to do is to shape the neck opening so that it will become rounded and higher on each end, and that is to make it fit a little bit better over the shoulders. And I have placed 2 markers, and the stitches in between the markers are the ones that I will not touch. These are the front of the neck, and the stitches on the left and the right side here, those are the ones that I will be knitting to make the front piece longer and to shape the neck hole. And I will begin where I have my working yarn, and the last thing I did was to twist my cable, and now I turn to the wrong side, and to shape the neck opening I will need to cast on a few stitches here, and I will show you how I do. So I begin just as I have done before. I slip the first stitch and I follow my pattern. I knit the knit stitches and I purl the purl stitches, and the markers, they are really there just to make it a bit easier for me, and that I don't have to count how many stitches while I knit. That is done beforehand. I don't need the markers. I could just count the stitches I am knitting now. I have 20 stitches here, so I could count the 20 first stitches, and then I would know where to turn. But I think it is more comfortable to place a marker there just to help me remember. And now I have arrived at the first marker, so this is where I will turn. I will go back here again, but first I will cast off 4 stitches. The number of stitches I cast off, of course, I follow my pattern. So if you follow my pattern, you can go with what I do, and if you follow a different pattern, you check what it says. So I slip the first stitch, then I knit the next, then I take the first stitch and I slip it over the second and off the needle. So now I have cast off 1 stitch. Then I knit 1 more. So now there are 2 stitches again, and I take the one on the right and slip it over the one on the left. That's 2 stitches cast off, and I follow again my pattern. So now I purl and cast off. Again I purl and cast off. So now I have cast off 4 stitches, and then I just follow my pattern to the end of the row. And when I get to the row where I am supposed to twist my cable, I do that. So I follow, I just keep following the pattern while I do this. So I turn again, and I do the same. And I just knit my way and now you can see that now at least I don't need this anymore, because the gap is so big, so there is no way I can mistake where I should turn. And now when I turn, I will cast off a few more stitches. Now the number will be 3. So I'll just do it the same way that I did the last time. I just follow my pattern and I cast off three stitches before I continue to knit. And then I will, when I turn and go back here, the next time I will cast off 2 stitches and then 1 stitch and 1 stitch and 1 stitch until I am left with 8 stitches here on the shoulder. And the numbers that I am giving you here, those are for this project and this pattern and this size. So I would advise you to visit the website just to get the numbers for the size you are knitting, or of course to follow the pattern you are using if you are only using this as a guide for a different pattern. So anyway, I will continue now to finish this, and when I have 8 stitches left here, I will knit to this end of the row, and I will do the same operation on the other side. And when I am finished, I will make another piece just like this one, so that I have two. And when I am finished with two pieces, I will get back to you on how to attach the shoulders and to make the neck itself. Now I have finished both the front and back piece, and I have placed them on top of each other with the wrong side facing out. This is the wrong side and this is the wrong side. If I open up here, you can see that this is the right side that is towards each other. And what I'm going to show you now is how to gather the shoulders. And I do that while having my work on the wrong side, because then I will get the seam on the wrong side and the best looking side on the right side. So I will just show you how I do, and I will use a 3 needle bind off, and it is just to explain shortly that I will knit the stitches together and cast off at the same time. So first I just check that I have the same stitch number on both needles, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's good. Here I have 2 yarn ends. Since I knew that I was doing this, I left a quite a generous length of yarn, and I just tuck one of them away and I use the other, and I find my third needle, and what I do is that I hold these 2 needles parallel to each other, and I begin here at the outer edge and I work my way towards the neck opening. And I just stick my needle through the first stitch on the needle closest to me, and then on the first stitch on the needle away from me, I pick up the yarn and I bring my yarn through first this stitch and then this one. And when that is done, I just slip both stitches, first this one and then this one, off the needle. So now I have knitted the 2 first stitches together. I do the same again, stick my needle through both stitches, pick up the yarn, I bring it through both stitches, and then I slip both stitches off their needles. Now I have 2 stitches here, and I pick up the one on the right and slip it over the other one. So now I have cast off 1 stitch. And I just continue like this. And I continue until I have cast off all stitches, and I'm only left with the 1 stitch here on this needle. I make sure that I do not cast off too tight. I leave some room in these stitches. That way the piece that I now knit together will keep some elasticity. If I do this too tight, the shoulder may look a little bit pinched together when you are finished, and it will have poor elasticity. So here I cast off again. Now I'm left with only one stitch and a loose yarn end, and I will just pull the loose yarn end through, and this is one shoulder. Here you can see how it looks on the wrong side, and if I turn to the right side, this is how it looks. And I just want to mention that on the other shoulder I used, here I had my working yarn and one loose yarn end instead of the two loose yarn ends that I used here, and then I chose to knit with my working yarn, the one that is attached to my ball of yarn, and I left the last stitch here. I did not just cut the yarn and pull this one through, because now I can just continue with my yarn here when I will do the next step, which is the next I'm going to show you. So now I have finished gathering both shoulders. I have turned my work to the right side. So you can see you face the right side here, and this is also the right side. And I will begin to pick up stitches around here. And I will begin on this side where I have one stitch to begin with, because this is where I used my working yarn to gather the shoulder. There I left the last stitch just so that I didn't need to cut the yarn. And what I do is, first I just make sure I have the right yarn end, and then I begin to pick up stitches along the edge here. And I don't need a second needle for it, because it is so loose that I can use a second needle if I like, but I can really just knit, just pick up the yarn and knit this way. I have to make sure that I choose good places to pick up the yarn so that I don't make these gaps. I can go around and twist, then I will need another needle. I can twist this one instead of knitting like this and I get the hole. I can twist it like this, which closes the gap quite good. I try to keep an even distance on the stitches that I pick up, and the pattern may suggest the number of stitches that you need to get the right size for the ribbing on the neck. This one should be possible to divide into 4, because I have a knit to purl to ribbing, and then one repetition of that is 4 stitches. So the pattern has to be, you have to be able to divide it by 4. But I don't count when I do this. I just pick up the stitches, and when I arrive here where I have my stitches already on the needle, I will just knit all of those. I do not follow the pattern anymore, I knit every one. And then here I continue to pick up approximately the same amount of stitches that I am doing here. And I continue until I have picked up stitches all around the edge and I am back here at the beginning. I try to stick to at least as to the best of my ability, I try to stick to the gauge. But don't worry about having a few stitches too many or too few. Just pick them up, and in the first round of knitting the ribbing, you can always add a few stitches or knit a couple of them together to adjust. So just find good places to pick up stitches and try not to make too many big holes. And when I am finished picking up all my stitches, I will get back to you on how to begin the ribbing. Now I have picked up stitches all the way around and I'm ready to begin my ribbing. Before I begin the ribbing, I make sure I count the stitches around here, and because I will do a ribbing of knit 2, purl 2, I need it to be a number that can be divided by 4. So I check that, and if it isn't, I find some place around the first row I knit to maybe knit 2 stitches together like that, or maybe to pick up and make one more stitch somewhere I find that suitable. But otherwise I will continue to knit 2 and purl 2 throughout the round, and I will continue this until the neck has the length that I am looking for, and when it has, I will get back to you on how I cast off and finish. And now my ribbing has reached the length that I was looking for, and the only thing left to do is to cast off. And this part you want to be able to pull over your head quite easily, so I want to cast off loosely. So what I do, I'm now at the beginning of my row, and I will continue to follow my ribbing and knit the knit stitches and purl the purl stitches. So I will begin by knitting the 2 first stitches, and I make it quite loose, as you can see here. Then to cast off, I take the stitch on the right, the one I did first, and I slip it over the other one and off the needle. And I do not pull anywhere, I just leave it like this. And then I purl the next one. And I take the right stitch and slip over the left one. I purl again. So now I will continue to cast off all my stitches until I am left with only 1 stitch. All of these will be gone and I will have 1 left like this. Then I will cut my yarn and I will simply pull the yarn end through like this. And then I will attach this yarn end and the others on the wrong side with a sewing needle. And that's it really. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this was useful to you.